This morning's text comes from Ephesians chapter 4, the 25th through the 32nd verse. We're in what would be called the ethical section of the letter. That is to say, Paul usually scopes out in his letter the nature of God, the nature of God's grace and God's love, and then begins to talk about our response to it, the ethical section. And that's, at least in part, where we are now. Would you listen to see if the Spirit brings a live and fresh word from a very old text to you? Therefore, putting away falsehood, let everyone speak the truth with his neighbor, for we are members of one another. Be angry, but do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and give no opportunity to the devil. Let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, doing honest work with his hands, so that he may be able to give to those in need. Let no evil talk come out of your mouths, but only such as good for edifying as it fits the occasion, that it may impart grace to those who hear. And do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, in whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you. The grass withers and the flower fades, but the word of our God stands forever. I don't know, if you're like me, maybe you're getting exhausted trying to sort your way through all of the stories, all the different versions of reality that seem to fly at us day after day. Exhausted sorting through the bullshit to try and get to a place where you can hear something or see something that has this sweet smell of truth to it. But it seems to evade us time and time again. It's almost like it can go a long period of time between even recognizing what truth might be. You forget what it is. You hear so much of the garbage all the time. It's easy, of course, to put it off on the outrageous politician of the day, Donald Trump, with his wild lies. I mean, the guy said yesterday that Hillary Clinton wanted to put violent criminals on the street. Well, just on the face of it, that's ridiculous. But there's the lie, just right out there, a version of truth that he just decided to put out there and see if it would stick somewhere. His brand of the future of America is filled with fear and hatred and putting people away, quashing people down, building walls. So you know it all. This is what it's been like. His version of truth. And he has a loud megaphone, so there it goes. And it's like people can't sort through the garbage that comes out. So then I read in the New York Times last week this article about Donald and women. The way he's been with women in the past. And I got to tell you, I was concerned about the bullshit then too. I mean, for goodness sakes, you're going to go into his past to his ex-girlfriends and ask them what he thinks about him? This isn't exactly the place that we go to look for truth. This is the place that we go if we want to raise the hackles of people and get them stirred up. Oh, he's been rotten to women. And I understand, I'm not suggesting that he's been great to them. I'm just saying that an article like this, just on the face of it, starts to distort. It seems more intended to light a fire under us than it is really to inform us about what's going on. And so I just get tired sorting through it all, trying to find the truth. I have a close friend right now named Mark Goffney, and he is the victim of a smear campaign, which strangely enough started with a relatively innocuous article in the New York Times on Christmas Day. Now, whether or not you agree with the various things that have been said about him on the web, and there's so much garbage out there, that's not exactly my point here. I mean, I really don't think the charges hold water. But whether or not, it's obviously an organized smear campaign. And what does that do to a community? When distortions, when little pieces are woven together in a horrible narrative that at a certain point just doesn't have any reference to reality, and you have people spouting off on the web about what should happen to this guy that they've really never met, while there are hidden motivations for the people that are pushing it out there and trying to make it happen. Trying to sort through the truth. It leads to division. I mean, friends I've had don't feel like friends anymore. It leads to malice, frustration, all those things that the Apostle Paul was saying don't belong in a community that is knit together by the strength and the power of the love of God. It's the nature of it, this truth that is constructed, and it just seems like it's part of living in our crazy postmodern world where all truth is perspectival. You know, so any story that's told is told from the point of view of my feelings, my perspective, whether or not I feel like a victim, whether I was hurt. You know, and my version of the truth seems to have just as much validity as anybody else's version of the truth. It's not a way to live, because I'm really terrified by what happens then, because whose version of the truth wins? I mean, ultimately, it's the person with the biggest gun, the person with the loudest microphone. I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with the depth structures of reality, with the direction that creation needs to go. I think that's what the Apostle Paul was getting at here. What we need is some place to stand. Some truth that we can stand on, some standard that points beyond ourselves. And that's exactly what the conversation of scriptures has been doing for thousands of years. Now, the Torah, which is really the foundation of the scriptures, both Hebrew and Christian, it's an explanation, or it's a teaching of law. Now, I understand that law's had a bad word, and for goodness sakes, the church has used the law to make people feel guilty, to put people down, to put themselves in some kind of powerful position. I mean, it's not been a pretty thing, but law isn't really about that. Laws need to be interpreted over time. They're contextual in society, and human beings need to learn how to shape them so that human behavior can look beyond itself to the next beautiful thing. But the law always has the same shape, the law of Torah. It begins with a relationship to that which is divine, to what I might call the evolutionary impulse, the love of God that animates the universe. It begins with a connection to there that points beyond myself. It's not my point of view. Oh, yes, it's my point of view on that point of view, of course. But it points beyond myself. I'm not stuck in myself at that juncture. And from there, from that connection to that creative impulse, well, then it looks out to those around me. How am I going to treat them? How are we going to treat one another so that we are able to create a society where truth will will out, where the creative impulse of God will unfold in front of our eyes? That's what we need, and that's what we have in Torah. I know it's an old-fashioned document, and we have to recontextualize it and bring it in, but it points beyond ourselves. Something that our society has been unable to do. It points beyond ourselves into the purposes of the depth structures of reality. It's the nature of God to unfold creation forward. And it's that project that we are caught up within. Because there is a unity among us, a unity in the whole creation. That's what Paul is pointing to in this passage. He had an incredible theological imagination. He had a deep sense of how the movement of spirit happened in creation. And he knew how we could be in harmony with it living out a life of love, which is a life founded upon law, that shaped law, where we connect to the power and the strength of God and share that, express that love to one another. Imagine a world like that. Can we imagine how the world might improve just a bit these days? If words, instead of being used to tear people down, were used to help people understand one another, where listening took place before policy prescriptions. Does it seem like a pipe dream? I suppose it might, but that's the kind of work we have to do. Move to a place where words are used to reach towards reconciliation and not towards division and malice. But of course, that would make us afraid, because we'd have to let go of the life that we have constructed from that false, separate self-perspective. But that's always been a house of cards, because that's not built on the reality and the strength of what is true and real, built into the creation, to the structures there. So it's always waiting to be falling apart, always that house of cards ready to come down. Instead, what's true is who you are, is an expression of that creative love of God that we connect to in the law. You're an expression of that, and you have the ability to make a difference in the world, to carry us forward to a place of forgiveness and reconciliation and new hope. If you commit your life to seeking a truth that does not refer to you, but rather refers to the love of God in the world. Prophets from Amos to Martin Luther King Jr. have been saying that we need to do it, or we will deny it at our peril. That's why King used to like to quote those phrases: truth crushed to earth will rise again, no lie can live forever, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. We can't make fun of those internal structures, pretending they're not there, and yet that's what the truth from a personal perspective, rather from that perspective of unity and growth, that's what it does. The call of the text today is to live a life that has some purpose, that is connected to the movements of God, built on a life that, is filled with the law that is the expression of love in the world.